Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 128 of Petey's Awesome Guest Panel. And yes, we are back after a very long sabbatical of 3 months. Now, before we introduce tonight's returning guest star, I do want to introduce tonight's co-host for this evening, both Dinosaurs fans. But first, I'm going to introduce tonight. He's a long-time friend of mine, my buddy, Christopher Petey.
Hey, yo.
You know, Chris, we still got that, Ed McMahon, Johnny Carson bit going here. You're my Ed and I'm the Carson,
Indeed, yeah.
Yep. Joining us also today is also Dinosaur fan, and that is another good buddy of mine and fellow Power Ranger fan too, and that is Mr. Dan Romano.
Hey, glad to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Pete.
No problem. Now, to introduce tonight's guest star, let me just say I've been a fan of this man's work for many years. He's given me many memories watching shows like Dinosaurs, Life with Louie, and of course, one of my favorite TV shows growing up, Disney's Aladdin. And he's one of my favorite voice actors of all time. I welcome back a dear friend of mine and a legendary voice actor, veteran voice actor, and star of Dinosaurs, Mr. Earl Sinclair himself, Mr. Stuart Pankin. Mr. Stuart, how are you today, sir? Welcome.
I'm sorry, who are you? Oh, Peter. Yes, I know exactly who you are. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you again, sir. We're gonna dive right into the questions. We're gonna ask some questions we didn't get to ask last time, though, and we have questions that both Chris and Dan want to ask specifically to you because dinosaur fans, all three of us, we have different kinds of questions and we want to know. But before we get into the dinosaur related questions, we have some preliminary questions. Pardon me, sorry. And one of them is, how do you think humor has evolved in television over the years, and how has it influenced your acting style?
Wow, that's a big question. I think humor was a little more simplistic and accessible to the masses years ago. When I started it, and it still is to some extent. There's still some sitcoms that they're on television that I don't watch them, but I tend to think the little that I know about them that they're made for the masses, as it were, which is not a bad thing. I love the masses. The masses paid for those roses back there. Probably nowadays it's a little more edgy. It's a little more humor. When you're dealing with political stuff and social stuff, it's and that's what's being dealt with now, which wasn't being dealt with in the 70s and the 80s, and even the 90s when I was working. It's edgier. It's darker. How has it affected my work? It's not really affected anything. I mean, when you get a script, you look at it and you try to bring yourself to the script and the script to you. And if it is darker, you deal with it, or you say no. I mean, I don't like to say no, but that's kind of simplistically the difference in what I see as comedy today. A little, simplistic. I mean, a little more slapstick. I mean, the famous Lucy show, and shows today which deal with politics and racism and stuff like that. There.
I see what you mean, and totally fair points. And of course,
I only make fair points, Peter.
And I noticed that in our last interview, and I love your answers, by the way, Stuart. Chris, your question.
What's your approach to preparing for comedic roles versus more serious roles?
There's no real difference. I mean, that's a question actors get asked a lot. In a sense, they say comedy is more intellectual and drama is more emotional. I mean, I guess if you're doing a dramatic role, you have to tap into some of the darker, the more emotional stuff in you. In comedy, it deals with timing. And Hal Linden once told me that there's a few kinds of laughs. There's volume jokes. There's content jokes. To make something funny, sometimes just say things louder. Nathan Lane is an expert on that. And content jokes, and you have to be aware of the more technical aspects of comedy as far as timing and holding for laughs. Even the first thing I ever did out here, the San Pedro Beach Bums, they asked us if we had a funny line, which they considered funny. they said take a pause. And as a stage actor, I said, well, I understand that, but film that's a strange thing to ask. But it's true. I guess you have to deal with that. So that would be my answer. That's drama is you have to maybe, if you really want to go for it, you tap into what the drama is telling you as far as the script is concerned. You always go to the script first. That's the first thing. And comedy is a little more technical, and you have to deal with pauses and volume and content and stuff like that. So that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
So there's a more cerebral element to comedy, you're saying?
You know, I guess I am saying that. Yeah, there is. It's a little more intellectual, a little more heady, and yeah, I am saying that. That's what I'm saying.
I kind of want to balance, piggyback off what Chris's question, and I want to ask you this too, Stuart, is that how do you balance comedy and social commentary when doing any specific role you're doing?
Well, that's a tough question. It would not necessarily the news happen. We just we get the scene, we get the skit, and you just do it. And you don't. There's not a question of balancing. You take your information from the script. I mean, and if there's social commentary involved, unless you disagree mightily with what they're saying, you do it. You act it. You read the words. You bring whatever insight you have to the script. But as far as balancing, there's no, I say, oh, this is a political racist thing. Oh, and this is comedy. How can I you don't do that. I don't do that. You just read the script, and it becomes, and what comes out comes from the script and your experience.
Would you say a fair example of this would be like, for instance, like in an episode of Dinosaurs, Earl Sinclair, like you have a comedic character like Earl Sinclair, and the issue at hand is whether it's dealing with, Father's Day, whatever the topic is. And Dinosaurs covered a lot of those topics. That way you have a comedic character like Earl Sinclair, but he's trying to relay the message through social commentary to deliver the moral of the story.
What's the question?
Like, would you say like a perfect example of like balancing comedy and social would be like a scene where Earl Sinclair, who's a comedic character, is relaying a message or some sort to the audience through social like commentary and political means to get their message across to the audience?
Well, again, it comes from the script. It comes from the words. Whatever, like the last episode of Dinosaurs, which was, in a sense, kind of controversial. I didn't read it and say, "Oh, they're talking about the death of dinosaurs." You just do it. You say to the baby, "Oh, we're not going to be here forever," and you just say what's written. And if it doesn't make sense to you, you talk to the writers. But as far as Dinosaurs was a terrifically written show.
Absolutely.
So there's no magic to it. If it's well written, you just say the words in character, and hopefully your message, whatever that is, will come across. If it's a joke, you make the joke, and if it has something to do with social commentary, like the end of the world, or some sort of what did we did so many things like vegetarians. I mean, whatever we did, you just read the script and interact with the other characters, and hopefully your message, if there is a message, will come across.
You've worked with some comedy greats too, like Mel Brooks, life
Who?
stinks. So it's Mel
Oh,
Brooks.
Mel Brooks. Yeah, I heard of him.
Yeah. So
What about it?
Oh, no, I was just adding, kind of like just saying you've worked with comedy greats too, so you know good comedy when you're around it.
Yes, yes. It's you always learn from the best, or as Mel would say, you always steal from the best. So, when you're working with a lot of people, sometimes if you have moments, you can say, "Oh, look at that! Look what he did there," and you can maybe take that into yourself. But mostly, when you're on the set with anybody, including Mr. Brooke, you're just trying to do your job the best you can, so he won't yell at you. Not that he ever yelled at me, but he's a remarkable guy. I mean, I've worked with him 3 times, and all of them were. He makes me laugh. I mean, he's just a funny man,
And
And
he's still going now too. He's in his late 90s now. He's so good for him.
Yeah.
he's 98, and and hopefully he'll continue more and more and more.
He's still isn't he working on Spaceballs 2 now? That's what I heard.
I don't know. The bastard never calls me. He never asks me. So the hell with him.
I always liked the team of him and Carl Reiner. They were always a great team, him and Carl
Oh,
Reiner.
please. The first thing I did as a kid in the talent show of my junior high school, maybe it was high school, was memorizing the 2,000-year-old man and doing the 2,000-year-old man. So Mel Brooks has been, and I've told him that many times, he started my interest in acting. That's not entirely true. I knew I wanted to be an actor since I was a kid. But that's the first thing that I did, and just memorizing his stuff. So Mel's been with me a long time.
It's incredible. And Chris, before you ask your question, I just want to say we're going to discuss like certain episodes too of Dinosaurs, like that were specific, like we talked about, that covered certain topics, whether it was sexual harassment, whether it was politically. And by the way, while we talk about this, Stu, I'm actually going to pay tribute to you in one scene, just to show you how absolutely excellent you are with delivering your lines in Dinosaurs.
Oh, thank you. I hope I remember some of these episodes. You got to remind me, because it's been a long time.
There's one scene particular that I remember verbatim that I'm gladly going to share with you and Chris and Dan later. But Chris, your question?
Yeah. So, what are some of your favorite projects that you've worked on throughout your career?
Well, most of my favorite stuff has been in the theater, to be honest with you. I started on the stage, I got a degree in theater from Columbia and worked in theater with my wife and other wonderful actors for years and years and years. It's silly to name the plays. I mean, okay, I will. Tally's Folly, Born Yesterday. There's an awful lot of wonderful plays. As far as film and television, I love doing Fatal Attraction. I love doing Not Necessarily News. I can't remember just loving the episodic stuff, because in episodic stuff, they don't ask that much from you. If you're a regular, you get to dig deep. But in episodic stuff, you come in, you go out. So I don't really remember, loving all that stuff. Grateful to do it, happy to have it. But yeah, Fatal Attraction, Dinosaurs. What did I say? Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves was a fun project, because Rich Moranis was such a great guy. But those are, besides the theater, and I've done over 80 plays, so there's an awful lot that I love and remember a great deal about. Never the dialogue. I forget the dialogue as soon as the play's over. But those are the things that I love the most.
So cool. And you mentioned Rick Moranis too. I mean, you guys, you were in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, right? The series, right?
Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves.
Shrunk Ourselves. Because I just wanted to, I didn't want to clarify. I want to clarify that between that and also Honey, I Blew Up the Baby, because they were both Rick Moranis projects.
Oh, they were all Rick. Rick was in all of them, including the original one. Yeah, Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves was the first made for video release. It was never intended to go to a movie or television. I look through, Netflix and Amazon and all that stuff. I don't see it. I wish it were, because it's a terrific little movie. But it was the first one that was made specifically for video release. And Rick was in all of them.
Oh, they were a great season, a great series. The franchise was great.
Yeah.
My favorite was the first one, and Blew Up the Baby, and of course Shrunk Ourselves was great too. But, like, just the scenes was incredible. Like the props, like how they did like everything so magnetized. Like everything was just great. It was like just the props were just great in that movie.
Yes, it was a lot of oversized props, a lot of green screen, and some wonderful actors. There were about four of us that we just spent weeks doing that movie. It was great. It was fun.
Totally. Dan, your question.
Was it?
Come on, Dan.
I kind of already asked it. How have you seen television industry change since the early days of acting?
Have I seen television change?
Yeah.
Well, like I said before, it's it's a lot as far as comedy. As I said, it's a lot darker now, and it touches social questions that it didn't before. I think the thing is the procedurals and some of the things that I watch or skim through. It's gotten very violent, which wasn't that way in the 70s, 80s, 90s, or whatever. Let alone the 40s and 50s. It's gotten a lot violent, and if you can look at it like it's a cartoon, like it's fake, and that's one thing. There are people that I know who will watch that stuff, but violent and also dark, like stuff like Saw or some of those movies that torture and all that stuff. I can't watch that. It's an endorphin killer. But that's sadly where things are going now, or have gone. And I don't know if it's going to change. I mean, people, the need for violence or release from the tensions of the world, if they get it in television or movie violence. All right, that's the way it is. But that's basically, I think, the way it's changed. It's gotten a lot more out there.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And
But I don't watch much TV either. I mostly watch a lot of movies. So
I watch a lot of we watch a lot of British stuff on Amazon and Prime Time and Prime whatever they call it on the
Prime Video.
Prime Video, and there's some great shows on there, and they're a little less. They're still dark, but they're a little less. And I don't like Dan says, I don't watch a lot of network television unless I'm in it, and then I try to watch it.
Really quick, like, what's the favorite film you've acted in? Because I mostly know you for your film work. Of everything you've like, because I'd say one of my favorite of yours is probably Fatal Attraction or Striptease, because those are pretty good. And then just a couple of days ago, I saw Mannequin 2 on TV, and so it was pretty funny. With Christy Swanson, it's pretty great.
Christy Swanson, what a sweetie. Yeah, those movies that you mentioned were fun to do. Also, well, Striptease was a lot of fun to do. It didn't, it probably wasn't as successful as it should have been. Fatal Attraction was as successful as it should have been. Mannequin 2 was a lot of fun. They filmed it in Philadelphia, where I come from, so I got to see my mother in the old haunts. Yeah, those are.
Oh, you're in Philly? I didn't know that. That's cool.
Philadelphia?
I said I didn't know you were in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
I'm in Chicago here, but that's cool. Yeah,
well,
I want to get over there one of these days. I want to.
Want to go to Philly?
Yeah.
It's a pretty city.
Stu, like we mentioned before, we're going to talk about dinosaurs now, and we're going to segue right into dinosaurs too. Like I mentioned earlier, Dan, Chris, and myself were longtime dinosaur fans. We thought you nailed the role totally as Earl Sinclair, and we're going to segue into the dinosaur questions now. And Chris, you want to care to do the honors to ask the first dinosaur question?
I hope I remember the episodes to be able to answer it.
Oh, don't worry. I'll refresh your memory.
So, what was your favorite part about playing a lovable, dim-witted father, Earl Sinclair?
Being lovable, being dim-witted, and being a father. I mean, Earl Sinclair, I'm happy and proud to have gotten it. Every actor in LA auditioned for that role because doing voiceovers is a terrific. You can show up naked and still do the job. Earl, all that stuff was well written. It was a pleasure, doing the character. We did it separately I might have mentioned this before, in the booth. So we never interacted. In the old days, we used to have 2 or 3 times we had a cast reading around the table. Then we just stopped that and just did it individually. So that takes away from, some of the spontaneity. Also, as a character, as Earl Capra, I had to replace the voice of the puppeteer. My puppeteer was a wonderful Englishman. Oh God, I wish I remember his name. Great little guy. But he talked like this, I was like, honey, I'm home. Graham, could you get me a beer or something? So they didn't want that. They wanted Earl. So I had to replace it, which meant I was a little limited with what I could do because I had to match his mouth movements. That was a little challenging, uh, but basically I enjoyed saying the words. I enjoyed doing the character. It was a show that was good for adults. It was a show that was good for kids, even if they didn't understand some of the social and the underlying meanings. So it was a terrific show to do. Like I always say, not necessarily the news. We never did anything we had to be ashamed of, really. And in Dinosaurs, the same thing. It was cleverly written, and we never did anything that we really had to be ashamed of. I mean, even sexual harassment and whatever it was. So that was a pleasure in doing that character.
Yeah, and especially you covered so many real life, real world topics, and this is what I was telling Chris about too. Like, it's incredible how incredible show like Dinosaurs, it's a kid show, yet there's so many cleverly written adult humor and jokes and ideology, like you mentioned before, like sexual harassment. And then you got episode Charlene's Tale, which represents growth in women's breasts. Then you got the mating dance or the Howlin' days, which basically, I'm not gonna say it here, but we all know what that represented. And then, of course, you mentioned like the topics of vegetarianism, drugs, gangs, like, and that's what I loved about Dinosaurs. It's like it's a kid show, but it's like they're using real world elements to relay the message across.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said is true. You don't need to. I mean, and Dinosaurs, especially since it's been released on the Disney Channel, people still watch it. And whenever I get autograph requests, it's usually Dinosaurs, because people are loving that show. And everything you said was right. I mean, it dealt with social issues, which meant that it could be cleverly watched by the parents. And the puppets were terrific. So the kids enjoyed that. So yeah, I don't have to say a thing. You said it all, Peter.
Yeah, and I also have before I ask my next question, I do have a special message from you from Sam McMurray. He's told me to tell you this too, because I invited him on like to try to get like an Earl Roy reunion, but unfortunately he wasn't able to. And he said, and I quote, "Send him my love," of Sam McMurray.
That's it. Just send him my love.
Yep, I said,
No money, no checks, no presents.
Sam.
Sam was great. We were golf buddies for years after that show. And he's a terrific actor and a terrific guy. So thank you, Sam. If you ever see Sam again, talk him into an Earl Roy reunion and send him my love back. Only not quite as much as he sent me.
Permission to show this clip to him, Mr. Pankin?
Permission granted.
Okay. The question I have for you to piggyback again on Chris's question is, what drew you to the role of Earl Sinclair, and how did what was your approach or method on bringing this character to life?
Well, what drew me to the role was it was a job. Actors never turn down jobs. I mean, and it was a good job. What was the second part of that question?
What was your approach or method on bringing Earl Sinclair to life?
Well, I knew he was a big guy, and so I wanted to voice him down a little bit. In the beginning, when we did the pilot, which took 2 8-hour days, the powers that be said, "Be louder, be funny, he's louder, be funny, blah, blah, blah." And then they realized that wasn't right, and I didn't want to do it that way. To be honest with you, I wanted to have sometimes Earl was like this, and sometimes Franny he was like this, and I wanted to but they didn't really let me do that in the beginning. Then, as the show went on, I kind of convinced them that to do it, with varying degrees of levels of interaction with the kids or with the wife or, with the boss or with Sam, that was the best way to do it. So that's the way I approached it. And there was an actor named Davey, I don't know, he was in a movie and he sang a song called "Well, the Times Have Come to Part." And so I sort of used that as the basis for Earl's voice. And then that changed, of course, as the dialogue changed. You adapt to the dialogue. But that's just, and again, I have to come back to it. Just reading the script shows you, he wasn't a guy like this, and so based on the script, it sort of led you to where the voice and the character went.
Does. And just the way you present, like the way that you and the cast were, like you, Sally, Jessica, and Robbie was voiced by, what was the gentleman's name again?
Oh, you tell me his name again. He's a nice kid. I don't remember.
I'm trying to
Don't
remember.
get over it.
Yeah. Just how you guys, like the chemistry is just great. I remember one scene in Power Erupt where, like, I think it was a scene with Earl Sinclair and Robbie, and they had to do their stuff, even though they had day off on an ash day. And then Robbie's like, "Hey, Dad, who, Bob's taking all the fun out of this. I mean, come on, like, who's the boss around here? I mean, yeah." And then you go, "Fran," and then she goes, "What?" And you go, "She is." I thought that kind of joke is just clever.
It was very clever, and that comes right out of that. When you did that, it sounded like Michael Jacobs. I mean, I bet he wrote that joke because that's his rhythm. Fran, what? She is.
She is. We got plenty of more of those to pay tribute to you later on. Don't worry. We got plenty of best Earl Sinclair moments that I will gladly share with you.
Cool.
The next question I have for you is, what was the most challenging part on working on Dinosaurs and portraying one itself on a sitcom, nonetheless?
Well, the most challenging was making sure that I could get my skill, my take into the character and having to still replace Mac. That was his name, Mac's voice. That was the big challenge, and the rest of it, there was no real challenge. I mean, sitting in a booth alone with the producers, it started out as 8-hour days, then we got better at it. So but that's tough, and it was also tough not being able, like I said, to interact with some of the other actors. Because and it was impossible to do that in voiceovers, cartoon voiceovers. Of course, you're sitting there with a room full of actors, and you're interacting and bouncing off each other. In Dinosaurs, you didn't do that, so you heard the other voices, and that's what you reacted to try to bring something to your stuff. But that's the most challenging: being in the room alone, not being with the other actors, and having to, as carefully as you can, replace Max.
Was Stu, you with us?
I'm with you, baby.
Okay, sorry, we just got a little froze there for a second. So Sherman Helmsley, the late great Sherman Helmsley, he never tried to spook anyone off stage, right? When he goes, "Stay clear."
Oh no, like we said, we read the script as a cast maybe once or twice, and we never worked together, in the booth. So Sherman he did his stuff alone. We all did our stuff alone. So he was great as what was his name?
Sherman Helmsley.
No, Sherman, but what was the boss's name?
Oh, BP Richfield.
BP Richfield. Yeah, so we all did it alone. So it was an individual effort on all our parts.
Ah. I remember the last name because every single dinosaur is pretty much named after some kind of like truck or something, like gas station, like Hess, Richfield, BP.
Oh yeah, oil companies.
Oil.
Yeah.
That's what I said, oil. Pardon me. Who had the next question? Chris, you had the next question.
All right, can you share any like funny or memorable moments from the set of Dinosaurs?
Well, we weren't on the set.
Yeah.
I sometimes brought friends or school kids who signed up for in fundraisers. They would sign up for a day on the set of Dinosaurs. But normally, I rarely went to the set. And when I took people to the set, it was usually after hours. The set was great. The set was wonderful. But I did come occasionally, and to look at the animatronics. And I put the head on once, which I never want to do again. And Bill Beretta, the great Bill Beretta, who was in the suit and now is a big producer at Henson, he actually lost height because of the problems with that suit. They actually built a seat into the tail so he could sit between takes. But being on the set and the occasional time that I did it was always fun to see those guys work. So there's not a lot of, except for putting on the head and try not to pass out. I didn't get there a lot. I mean, like I said, I was mostly in the booth.
Oh, And you
That
mentioned
was actually going to be my question because I was curious. Like, so, but I'm glad you did get to the set sometimes, just not all the time. Because I mean, it was a cool set. Like, and even the animatronics, the puppets themselves were really cool. I mean, that was all Henson stuff too. And what was funny when you guys were saying he was dimwitted, what's funny is it predates kind of a little bit The Simpsons and Family Guy.
I don't think
His,
it predates
his
The
character.
Simpsons. I
It
don't,
was around the same time though. It was, Simpsons was '90s, but Dinosaurs like wasn't that late
right.
'90s for
Well,
Simpsons?
it's a little after,
And
but Sam was Sam was on the Tracy Ullman show, and sadly he didn't get into The Simpsons. But then they did The Simpsons. Family Guys, I don't know what the timeline is. What else did you want to know?
But
oh
you kind of answered. I was just curious if you ever went to the set at all. So that, but you answered that already. So thank you
Yeah,
for
that
answering.
was yeah,
Yeah.
that was it. That was it. It was a great set. It was a great set. Set was raised so that like Kevin Koch, who did the baby, could be underneath and work the baby from underneath. And it was great. It was a fun set, the trees and the refrigerator and all that stuff. It was cool.
it was like it was just a cool set. Even the workplace, BP Richfield's office was just a cool thing. You see like this big massive like guy in this little tiny room. I just thought the concept was just great.
Yeah, well,
For me too, I like watching. I watch a lot of behind the scenes stuff of it, so it's cool to see how they would puppet them from
Yeah.
the side, and then you see the actors just mimicking the moves and try to match the.
well,
how they have to do.
I'm sure they rehearsed together. The animatronic, well, for Dinosaurs, was at the time, and maybe still, was the most expensive half-hour television show to date because of the animatronics and the upkeep of the puppets. And the animatronics were cool because they could change the button, what the buttons did. If an episode required Earl to go like that, they could make that. And the same button in another episode could make his mouth go like that. So they changed it, and I'm sure that the actors, the puppet people, the suit actors, went over those moves with the animatronic actors, who did the voices, which were later replaced. So yeah, they had quite the connection with those guys, and they were all Henson people. So it was nice for me and the other people. Henson characters, usually the Henson puppeteers did their own voices, but in Dinosaurs, they wanted different people, which I'm thrilled about. And I'm sure Sally and, Sam and the other guys were thrilled about too. But the Henson people were animatronics. They did the voices. And then the suit puppets, a bunch of those guys, I think, did the Rangers, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
yes.
Yeah,
Not the Rangers, the Turtles. So they had a really good symbiotic relationship, doing the characters and doing the movements, the physical movements and the puppet movements.
I believe also.
I actually think back.
What were you gonna say?
Sorry, Pete. Yeah, I was gonna say I think back to this one episode where they have to turn off the TV because it's gotten like too intensely violent, and Earl has to entertain the baby, and they actually end up like making so many like various funny faces for him, and that really works so well. I mean, I think there's maybe like 2 or 3, but yeah, I definitely remember that as being a standout part in my mind that always cracked me up to this day.
Yeah, I mean they could do a tremendous amount with the eyebrows and the eyes and the mouth and maybe even the nose. I don't remember, but they yes, I don't remember that episode real clearly, but I can understand how looking at those facial changes could be really fun.
Stu, I was gonna say too before I ask my next question too is would Fraggle, and maybe Dan you can answer this one too, like you mentioned how Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like that was done by the Henson Company, like the same stuff like Dinosaurs. Was Fraggle Rock also the same animatronics used for like the same that was used for Dinosaurs and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
it was, but smaller scale.
Also,
Like 'cause most of the Fraggles were just regular hand puppets like
No,
this,
no, I
but
mean-
when they had
no, I mean for the Gorgs, because they were live big ones.
oh yeah, probably I would assume it's similar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, similar or some variation of what they turned out to work on Dinosaurs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine.
And I figure like there was a lot of like what went into Labyrinth, as well as like another Jim Henson movie. I
Okay.
forget the name of it. It involved like talking birds or something like that. And
I'm glad you young people forget things too. It's really encouraging.
youngish. I mean, I'm almost 40
Youngish.
myself.
Oh dear God.
I'm 34. We're not the youngest bunch here.
I'm 36, so
We're all
Oh
in our
no, you're
30s.
just you're all ancient. Please, you could all be
real
my
quick, I
children.
want to throw this out there. I got the DVDs of Dinosaurs back
Me
here.
too.
It's somewhere buried back there, but I got
do
the
too.
set.
Uh,
You do?
Well,
Yeah.
Dan,
It's great.
Dan, didn't you have another question for Stuart related to this, though? I believe you had another question like that.
Oh, let's see.
Come on, Dan. I'm going to sleep. I swam today.
Dan, you're supposed to be the man. Come on. You're Dan the man. Come on.
A lot of, he already answered a lot of these questions, though.
That's
So
right.
which one-
It's number 12.
No,
Number 12.
what about
I'm a mind reader as well.
Okay, Dan, the hint question. You Henson. You had one question that had the word Henson.
Oh, yeah. Well, kind of already answered. So, like, but how was it working with Brian Henson and the Henson crew family?
Well, except for the in the early days when we, I guess, auditioned and then read around the table with the script. Brian wasn't in the voiceover sections. The little that I interacted with him, he was great. I mean, and his dad, I only met once, sadly, before he died. He also was great. I really enjoyed Brian. I thought he was smart and clever, and he and Michael Jacobs worked together very nicely to bring Dinosaurs to fruition. So I got nothing but nice things to say about both those guys.
You got me curious now. What event did you meet Jim at? When was that? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was in a hotel. You know what it was? It was when news people, we went from room to room being interviewed for Disney or ABC shows. You know, you go in here and there's a guy from Chicago, and then you go to another room, there's a guy from Milwaukee. And I think he was walking down the hall. And I probably said, Mr. Henson, I'm Stuart Pankin, it's a pleasure to meet you. I mean, but that's it. I mean, it was so quick that I'm sorry. And I got to know Brian a little bit better. And yeah, I always regret not spending a little more time. Actually, when I was in New York as a child, about 4 or 5, no, I was a lot. We did a show called Free to Be You and Me. It was Marlo Thomas, and the Henson people had, and I think Mel Brooks actually did a voice. They had babies in the show. It was one of the first things I ever did on tape. And the Henson people were working those puppets. So in a funny way, I worked with the Henson people in the late 60s, early 70s. Never knew it though, never really, got up to that place where they were doing that Henson stuff. But that's kind of it now that you mentioned it. I guess I worked with Jim Henson, 50 years ago.
One of a kind visionary. Like
That's so cool.
It is.
They got a documentary coming out about him on Disney Plus, I think.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, and I really want to see it. I'm remiss in not looking at it.
We talked about like episodes too, like topics that were covered though. One episode that sticks out to me was A New Leaf, and that was the one that tackled on the subject of the controversial issue between marijuana use, which Robbie and Spike tried this new plant which makes them happy, and then he brings it home to Earl, and then you do probably one of my favorite scenes you ever do, like on Dinosaurs, which I will gladly do. 2 of them. One was where you and I found out the guy's name was Jason Willinger.
Jason Willinger, he played Robbie, yes.
Yeah, when you guys were singing after you ate the plant, singing "It's the most unusual day." It's like
I swear to God, I remember A New Leaf, and I know it was about marijuana. I have no memory.
Oh,
I gotta watch this stuff. It seems really good.
Another episode that stuck out to me was "And the Winner Is," which is where Earl runs for chief elder against BP Richfield, which basically he wasn't running. BP made him run against him and told him he had to lose. But what this whole scene, and I'm going to pay tribute to you right now. I remember this whole scene verbatim. There is 3 characters in the scene. There is Richfield, Earl, and the moderator, Chief Elder. I think his name was Edward R. Murrow or something, basically a parody of Edward R. Murrow's character. I forgot what it was, and it went like something like this. If it's okay, if I may portray this scene, that's going to take literally a minute that you were in.
Go ahead.
Okay, guys, are you ready for this? Okay, so it basically starts out with, Earl and BP Richfield like doing a debate. Then you have the moderator, and he goes, "Mr. Sinclair, your opening statement." And he goes, "Let me just say first, Elder, that I would be a terrible choice for Elder. You should not pick me." And then BP goes, "In rebuttal, I just have to say I agree 100%." And then the commentator goes, "Mr. Richfield, Mr. Sinclair, do you know what you're saying?" And you go, "No, not usually." And he says, "Are you asking your voters to vote for Mr. Richfield?" "No, no, no, no. You see, I may be a complete boob, but he's absolute evil." And he goes, "What? Evil? What are you doing, you backstabbing fucking boss?" And you go, "You are evil. You told me so lots of times. He picked me to run against him and told me I had to lose."
Sounds funny. I wish I remembered it.
I thought that was good.
My
Yeah,
favorite.
that whole bit's actually come a bit of a like meme on Instagram, and people seem to have been thinking about it a lot lately. A lot.
I thought it was funny though, because it reminds me, I'm not a political guy, but I'm just gonna say this though. What that guy said, the Edward R. Murrow character, reminds me so much of what this election is. And it's like this, and it goes like this. "What an appalling display of debate. The voters shall now decide to choose between a self-professed brain-dead ignoramus or a bloodthirsty psychopath."
That is kind of strangely prescient, isn't it? Jesus, it's
Oh, that was a good episode.
Yeah, apparently Dinosaurs had its own crystal ball, like The Simpsons.
Yeah.
unbelievable. Yeah, well, Simpsons, apparently, I don't watch a lot, but apparently they do stuff like that, all the time, the topical stuff. But Dinosaurs was doing the 2024 election 30 years ago.
Yeah. Oh man, I was watching that episode. I was like, "Oh, this is so much like our election."
That's funny. I remember my favorite line, I think, when Richfield was coming after me in one of the scenes. Earl says, "Shall I expose my soft underbelly to you now, sir?" That's one of my favorite lines.
I remember that. That was Powered Erupt. That's when he takes him out to dinner to buy Robbie's invention.
Ah, you guys are something.
And I'll never forget when you had a scene with Ed Asner with Georgie. It was a parody of Barney the dinosaur, and it was a
Wow.
kid named Georgie.
Wow. I don't remember. I worked with Ed a bunch of times in life, but I don't remember him being on the show and doing that scene.
Oh yeah, it was an episode that never aired. Like it aired like later on, but it was on the DVD. And Dan, you probably remember this.
What's it called?
It was called Georgie Must Die. And Dan, you remember this
I
episode?
remember that. I remember that.
Oh no, I have to rewatch it. I haven't watched it in a while.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna.
season 4 of Dinosaurs. It was actually, I think, the last episode next to Earl and Pearl.
Wow. You guys, amazing.
Great show. And we talk, and you know what? I'll get on to my next question later on, but I want to make sure my good friends have some questions to ask. So, Chris, your next question. Pick one.
Are there any behind the scenes secrets or interesting facts to making of Dinosaurs that fans might not know about?
Well, no scandals. I mean, Charlotte never slept with any of the directors, so that's good. No, there's no, it was kind of a tight group. There was a lot of directors, which is nice. But as far as behind the scenes interesting stuff, like I said, I wasn't there, so I don't know. The only behind the scenes stuff that I enjoyed was when we took our lunch break, we went down to an Italian restaurant in Burbank and got some pasta. That's a highlight of my dinosaur career. But as far as any kind of scandal or backstage stuff, I mean, I did an interview for not necessarily the news with you're too young to remember, Reader's Digest, and when they were finished with us, they called each of us.
I remember.
Yes, of course you do. They said everybody seems to be so nice and friendly. And I said, "Don't you have any dirt in any scandal, any behind the scenes stuff?" And we all said, "No, we really don't. We got along." And I'm sure that's the way it was on the set of the Dinosaurs. I don't think anybody hit anybody. That anybody was screaming for more money or more credits. It was a nice set. So I'm sorry to disappoint you, Chris. You muckraker.
No drama at the time, which is pretty much a good thing. And this is also, I think, before like the Screen Actors Guild really took hold. So, yeah, it's good to hear that in some cases the actors and the staff were treated well.
Yeah, I think so.
We have a couple more questions, Stu, before we wrap up, though. And before I ask one of my final questions, too, I just want to say that one thing I always loved what you did as Earl Sinclair is I always loved when you did a falsetto. And I have a perfect example of this for that episode I named A New Leaf. And guys, this is one thing why I say Stu is like the man when it comes to like delivering voice acting. There's a scene where Earl, now eating the plant, now high after eating that plant in A New Leaf, goes up to his boss, B.P. Richfield, and he goes up to him and he goes, I know there's a little boy that wants to be set free there, boss. Let him free, big guy. Let him come out and play. I just thought when Stu did that, I thought that was just great. It just made me laugh.
Well, hopefully, it'd be great. People listen to these snippets and want to see the show again. That'd be great. I'll make 79 cents.
Oh, I think I should make the best of Earl Sinclair, though, because one of my favorite lines you did as Earl Sinclair was that same episode when he's laughing and Jessica goes, what are you laughing at? And you go, I just realized I'm not wearing any pants.
I remember that. The great Jessica.
It might have been like this. I feel like that was like only the second time when they tackled the concept of pants. And that was like the censorship episode the first time. Because, yeah, it was the same episode where things got too violent on television, and I guess they form a committee to like tackle the issues themselves. And somehow, some way, they don't really tell us how, but it leads up to all the dinosaurs themselves wearing pants. Well, at least the male dinosaurs wearing pants, and the female dinosaurs wearing pantyhose.
Huh.
I remember nothing, but I'm happy that you do. I'm wearing, these Zoom things are great. I'm wearing pantyhose now, so apropos.
Before we ask our final questions, too, Bob Bergen has told me to tell you this, because he found out that you're going to be on the show, and Bob Bergen, voice actor, said the following. He said, Stuart is such a nice guy, so damn talented.
Bob Bergen is the one of the kings of voiceovers, and I met him in a play. And he very generously offered to give me some advice on voiceover stuff, which I haven't done yet, but I will. And I'm so grateful to him. But he's Porky Pig, right? And he's been a voiceover king for years. So right back at him, a nice guy and unbelievably talented. So thank you, Bob.
Yep, much like you, Stu, Chris and I had the honor of interviewing Bob a couple of months ago. Just a wonderful guy. Just
nice guy.
Sweetheart, talented, like you said. And there's more names.
Actually, Pete, that was a year ago.
That was a year ago? Really? It felt like months ago.
Oh, well, he's not a nice guy anymore. A year later, he's.
No, we need to get next one. We got to get Chris. We got to get Bob. We got to get the other one on. Not Bob Bergen. The other one. I'm trying to remember what his name was. He voiced so many characters on Looney Tunes. Bob something. I'm trying to remember what his name was. But we had.
Well, I know a lot of There's Charlie Schlatter and Rob. Maurice LaMarche and
Maurice, yeah.
Oh, I reached out to those gentlemen.
Rob Paulson, he's cool too.
These are friends of mine, and because we have worked together, and extremely talented guys. I mean, I like them all.
Oh, and I've had Billy West on the show, another great talent in voice acting. Another one I've had
Frank Welker. Get Frank Welker on.
I actually asked Frank. he actually politely declined because he wasn't taking interview inquiries. I tried.
I forgot about him.
I tried Maurice, I tried Rob. Charlie, I did reach out to. He did agree to it, but we're gonna try to figure out something. And I also what'd you say? I'm sorry.
What's Charles' last name?
Charlie's like you said, the gentleman you just said. Charlie Stratter.
Oh, Charlie Schlatter, yeah.
Schlatter, pardon me. I reached out to him. Hopefully I can get back to him. But there's so many names like in the voice acting. I wanted to get Dan Castellaneta, but his agent said he doesn't do interviews.
No, he's too rich.
But yeah, so we have a couple of last questions before we wrap up. So, Dan, final comments or questions for Mr. Pankin?
Nice to finally meet you, sir. And this has been pretty fun. And thanks for answering my questions, by the way.
You're
And
so
I'm
welcome.
again a longtime fan of your film work and just dinosaur. Obviously, dinosaurs too. But again, I've seen a lot of your films and TV. Like I've watched Barney Miller, Night Court. So I'm dating myself with. Again, I watch old. I don't watch a lot of modern TV. So it's mostly
Brother.
Power Rangers and then old shows. So, but yeah, I've been a
My
long
son
timer.
My son loved Power Rangers.
I do too.
But go ahead. You got a question, or is that it?
Oh, that was it. But just again, nice to finally meet you, and thanks for doing this.
Dan, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Chris,
Seriously, really.
your turn, buddy.
Make it good, Chris.
So, I mean, I definitely appreciate having you on. Definitely appreciate you taking the time to answer our questions. But there is something that I remember asking Rob this last time when we had his interview, and was kind of wondering if you may have an answer, because you were probably still nonetheless more of the main cast, and so maybe there was actually like more input, like what went on with the script and such. But apparently, the series finale of Dinosaurs wasn't meant to be the series finale. It was actually a cancellation, and that like ended up making it the series finale. So my question on that is, do you know like what was supposed to like happen after that? Was the show really supposed to continue on like nothing happened, or was there going to be, I guess, maybe some plot point that would lead up to how the Ice Age was somehow prevented?
Well, my guess is, and it's a guess, that when the show was canceled, the guys had time to write the final episode. I'm sure that if the show went on, they would have, it would have continued in the same vein. But my guess is that once the cancellation came, they had time to write, the last episode to end the Dinosaurs. And I think it was great that they did it. A lot of people, I think they got mail from parents saying, "Oh, could you kill the dinosaurs?" They love. But the dinosaurs, if you look around, they're not here anymore. So, and the guys came up with I thought a terrific, moving, scientific, if you want to go there, explanation of. But I think if there were scripts in the bin for another season, it never happened. So, like I said, my guess is that when they got the cancellation, they had time to write this last episode. So to answer your question, I don't know if the show was going to go on or if they had any plans to have it go on. But I'm guessing that they wrote this as the finale. They wrote the Ice Age story as the finale. That's my best guess.
I still remember.
And it definitely delivered a real impactful environmentalist message.
Well,
we
yeah.
gotta just be mindful of like what direction we take when we let ourselves get into, I guess, late stage capitalism, if you will, because that's really like what drove the entire plot itself into like how it became so disastrous, and how the world ends up ending and killing off the entire main cast, the entirety of the cast.
The entire cast. Well, I'm sure that it was a little slap at capitalism, but I don't know. I'm not a huge disparager of capitalism. That's why I'm watching this computer. Somebody made that.
Stu, I got a two-part question and a final.
I have a two-part answer.
Well, I always love your answers, Stu. The question I have for you is, first off, what do you think of the impact that and the legacy that Dinosaurs has done on new generation of fans and on popular culture 33 years after its initial release? And also, what is next for Stuart, Pankin? And of course, you've been on the show before. You know how this is going to be. I'm gonna, you can talk about anything you want. You can promote, hype, talk about anything you want. I am passing you the proverbial microphone. The floor is yours, Mr. Pankin.
Well, you say, how does Dinosaurs affect 30 years later? I don't know if Dinosaurs affected a lot. It was meant to be a socially aware adult/kid show, and I think it fulfilled that purpose. I think it did that beautifully. To the fact is, that 30 years later, people are still, I mean, to my own horn, because who else will? I get like 6 to 8 autograph requests a week. They're mostly dinosaurs, signing dinosaur pictures, and kids and now adults who have talked to, who say, I watched it as a kid, and now my kids, I'm making them, not making, but I'm introducing dinosaurs to my kid. So as far as, cultural impact, this show is still, relevant, apparently, to parents and children nowadays, which I'm very happy about, very proud about. And it's a kudos to the writers, who, boy, they did a great job. So if that answers your question, I hope it does. If not, to hell with you.
That's a great answer. I love it. That's a great answer.
Well, and as far as, things are always slowed down. I've done a few, independent movies for friends when they ask me to do it. I'm just recovering from back surgery, so I've been out of them for a while.
You're right.
And I'm looking forward to knee surgery. That'll put me maybe back in contention. But a few movies, I did one was, I forget the name of it, the almost absolutely true story of Mariette Hartley. Mariette Hartley, the terrific actress, and her husband, Jerry Soroka, was an old friend of mine. They did a movie of their lives, which has been very successful around film festivals. I did a show for a guy named Ben Solenberger, who has given me a lot of little parts. It's called Cowboy, and that should be out soon. The last full thing I did was in the 20s, just before COVID, was called Deep in the Forest, another sort of political thing about, well, I won't go into it, it's not important. But right now, I'm usually doing, I swim, I play poker with my friends, and I do these little independent movies if my friends ask me, and I'm happy to do them. And if anybody out there who wants an incredibly handsome man to be in their movies, just let me know. Call Peter.
I may hit you up because I do. I mean, I have my own YouTube channel, but I film on, like, I'm working on my films through. I'm putting them on there. So just throwing that out there.
I'm available.
All right.
Stu, if you ever need help, I'm always here. You can message me. I am always a text message away if you ever need help with anything, sir.
I appreciate it.
I just want to say one last thing before we conclude, though, and this is going to make me sound like a real broken record because I think I said this to you on our last interview, but I want to say also, in all seriousness, thank you again for an incredible interview and the memories you gave, not just myself, but also Chris and Dan, watching, Dinosaurs growing up. I mean, I have so many memories watching Dinosaurs growing up and Earl Sinclair, just so many moments. Like, you really are, like, I've said this before, and again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record. I don't care if I do, but I will say this to you, Stu, that you have this incredible gift where you could take a 30-something-year-old fan and bring him way down here and make him feel like that little kid again watching Dinosaurs.
That's very sweet, Peter. I really, really appreciate that. It's very gratifying. Thank you.
Bless you so much, sir. I am actually gonna work on editing this video so I can give you a copy so I can post it right away.
Great.
And most of I like to try to get everything like done like ASAP. So you should get this very, very soon, this interview. And
don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt yourself. Don't strain anything.
One last thing I wanted to conclude before we conclude, and Chris knows where I'm going to go with this, and I feel like you deserve this, sir, and that is thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you,
Thank you, Stuart.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Peter. It was a pleasure. It really is. It's always a pleasure talking to you guys. Thank you.
Likewise. You have a great night, sir. Have a great night, everybody.
You too. Good night, everybody.
Bye.